I'm going to assume our next guest never gets sick and tired of this song. Country. Did you guys hear that?
Banger. It was always my favorite part of doing games there.
What's that new song out there where they took the exact same melody, they just changed the lyrics? It's out now. It's like instead of West Virginia, they say something like, "Where'd you come from?"
Yeah, they butcher it.
Yeah,
All
I hate
new
it.
stuff. It's
I hate
garbage.
it.
Garbage.
I hate it.
Stop it.
Absolutely hate it. We welcome in Chris Anderson, West Virginia 24/7 Sports, and he remembers a guy named Dana Holgorsen, who was the head coach there before he left for Houston. Chris, first of all, good morning. And does that song ever get old?
It does not get old because, as
That's
you
right.
know, usually when you hear it, that means West Virginia has won the football game, basketball game, whatever sporting event. So it's always played with good vibes in mind.
Yeah. Fire that damn Mustang.
And this new song that has the same melody is, does everybody agree out there it's garbage?
Yes.
Okay,
and
good.
I think it's called Lonely Road.
Yes.
And I would rather not hear it ever again.
Don't worry. You won't hear it on this
I'd rather
station.
drive off the lonely road into a ravine.
Yeah.
Well, before we get into Dana Holgorsen and just this sort of out of the blue outside hire for Nebraska, West Virginia, as far as the season right now for what you're covering, what you're seeing, a new look Big 12. Things are wild. I knew you guys, I'm sure when you were covering the West Virginia in the Big 12, thinking, boy, at some point we're going to have Central Florida in the Big 12. We're going to have all of these teams. Colorado's going to be back in the Big 12. Man, what a year for college football, but especially in the Big 12.
Yeah, it's kind of wild trying to figure out who's good, who's really good,
Mm-hmm.
what's going on, who's going to make the playoffs. I mean, I think it's sadly for the Big 12, it's likely going to be a one bid league based off of what we've seen so far. But I mean, I think part of the enjoyment of the Big 12, and not just this iteration, but even last year, is simply not knowing what to expect. Last year, West Virginia was picked to finish dead last, and they went 9-4. This year, Arizona State was picked to finish dead last, and I believe they are 7-2. And so, one, I guess the media doesn't know anything.
No, we don't.
hey, I don't vote on that anymore. They took me off the voting committee like 3 years ago.
Yeah, so you can point the fingers at them then.
That's right. I can point at everybody else. I think this is just the product of them taking me off that list. That's what it is, really. But it is enjoyable. It feels that there's not very many weeks where you go in and you're like, hey, this is a week where it's a disappointment if you don't win by 30, where you have one of those teams, or it's one of those where, oh my God, just going to get steamrolled by, team X. This is not going to be a fun week. So I think that's part of the allure of Big 12 football right now.
All right, let's dive in then. From your time covering West Virginia when Coach Holgorsen was out there, what's the thing, maybe one or two things that really stand out about him, both as a person and as a coach?
Well, I think this is the perfect opportunity for him as offensive coordinator. That is his job. That is his passion. And I think that is where he excels the most. There are aspects of the head coaching part of college football and recruiting part of football that I don't know if he's not good at it. He doesn't enjoy it. It's not his preferred thing. But as far as, hey, just get in the lab and think up some plays and work with these guys, that's his groove. Like, that's his spot. And so I think getting him back into that is perfect for him, and it's great for Nebraska.
It's so unique, Chris, that not only was Dana Holgorsen not on staff, but he was essentially one of the Bobs for TCU as a consultant. Now, we learned he wasn't actually spending all of his time in the football offices in Fort Worth, but he was an advisor, if you will. Then all of a sudden, not only is he not on staff, but he's elevated to the offensive coordinator, the play caller for a team that is desperate to get at least one more win to get bowl eligible. I felt like there are only a handful of people that any coach in America would be confident that if they did something that is so unusual that that person could pull it off. As you just mentioned, some of the qualities of Dana Holgorsen as an OC, just from a personality and this quick change and a little this sense of urgency, does that also seem to fit his personality and fit his, in his wheelhouse, so to speak?
Yeah, and I think because a lot of times when when you think of good offensive players, when people think of good offensive coordinators and stuff, they think, oh, they have this elaborate scheme that is complicated and tricks everybody. No, like Dana's thing is essentially, keep it simple, stupid. Like, hey, we got like 3 routes, and then there's a tree that comes off that route with options, and that's it. And you go and you just rep it and you rep it and you rep it. You switch up little tweaks here and there. So it's not going to be, if there is anybody that is capable of kind of jumping in midstream, which I still think it's crazy, a full-on new play caller coming from outside of the program to do. If there's anybody that can do it, he's probably one of the handful of people that can, because his scheme, his ideas are, hey, we're just going to keep it simple and we're going to rep it and we're just going to tweak some little things, and that's what's going to make the difference.
This is kind of a cold question, not prepped for it at all. Don't know if you have any experience with this, but like being out there and interacting with some of his former players who were in the West Virginia program, what were the things they say about Dana Holgorsen?
So, I mean, the players love it because he's a football guy. Like, I mean, I hate to steal that old cliche of he's a football, like, there is no BS with him. Like, it's part of the reason why I don't know if he's the best recruiter in the world. So I'm interested how that'll work out, is because he's just like, hey, I'm just here for football. I'm just here to score as many points as possible. I'm just here to win football games. I'm just here to, and maybe get you to the NFL. And that's it. And so a lot of players really appreciated like that kind of straightforward, hey, we're just here to do football. I'm going to help you do football. And then maybe you can do football again after college. And that was kind of his approach. And that connected with a lot of guys that were very serious about the game.
We're talking to Chris Anderson. He is the owner and publisher of ER Sports 24/7 site for West Virginia. If you think about, and this is the main intrigue here in the state of Nebraska, is you've got this freshman quarterback and the sky is the limit. He's already shown you glimpses of some real potential and big time abilities. He's regressed a little bit. And so not only Dana Holgorsen as the offensive minded guy, and as you mentioned just there, Chris, about his wanting to get you under his wing and get you to a level that can help you earn some money at the professional level. If you think about his connection with quarterbacks, what to you stood out with his development, his molding of quarterbacks at his time at West Virginia?
Well, that's the thing. If you go back and you look at most of the guys that he coached, like West Virginia has a rich history of college football, but they do not have a very rich history of placing a ton of skill players in the NFL. But Dana, Geno Smith, NFL, still bouncing around 15 years later. You go after that. I mean, Clint Trickett, he's in the coaching profession now. Probably could have played a little bit, but had some health issues that kept him from really bulking up and getting into the NFL shape. Skylar Howard was not the NFL caliber quarterback. He's more of a run-first quarterback, but he played professionally overseas for a decade. And then you have Will Grier, NFL quarterback, drafted, still bouncing around the league. So he is a guy that can really kind of, hey, I know what it takes to get you to the next level. Let's do it together. And I think, again, that really connects with some of those quarterbacks. And honestly, when I first heard about this, especially before the elevation to offensive coordinator, my first thought was, God, he's following in his boy Cliff Kingsbury's steps. And, Kingsbury went up to USC and was like, hey, I'll be a, quote, analyst or whatever you want to call me, but I don't want to recruit. I don't want to go into houses and shake mom's hand, all that stuff. I want to work with Caleb Williams at quarterback. I want to help you refine your offense. Let me get a year or two in, and then it'll help us both out. And honestly, I was like, man, he's going to do the same thing out there in Nebraska. He's got a nice toy at quarterback, and he's going to make the most of it.
So do you see this more as a short-term stopgap for him, or is this a place he could land for a longer term?
I say short-term as in not just the last, couple of weeks of this season, but maybe like one more year or two. I don't know what his ultimate goal is, to be honest with you. Like, I think before it was head coach, and then he got that taste of being a head coach, and now I think he's like, hey, maybe that's not for me. Maybe that's not my favorite thing. But I don't know if he wants to follow the Cliff Kingsbury model either and go to the NFL to be an offensive coordinator either. So We'll see if again, it's my first immediate thought is short term.
Yeah.
Hey, I help you, you help me.
Yeah,
This is
propel
great.
back in. Yeah.
But I just don't know what his ultimate goal is at this point in his career.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, again, I don't know how official this is, if this comes from the horse's mouth or not. I've heard a lot of things around him that he wants to be a head coach, and you would think, having at least a year or maybe a year and some change, maybe 2 years at a Power 4 school like Nebraska, and if you, especially with the offensive woes that Nebraska's had, if you are the reason that is elevated and they're able to win some ball games because of that, that would also put you right back up there as one of the more highly sought after guys, Chris. And the other thing about it is, what I think a lot of us are curious about, we know officially, because this came from Matt Rule on Monday, that he's the offensive coordinator for the rest of this season. It's implied by a lot of us, it wasn't said by the head coach, that he would be the OC next season in 2025. I'm going to assume he's not taking the short-term gig unless there was some type of reassurance that he'll be the guy in 2025. And if that is true, Chris, you know a little bit about how he staffs and the type of guys that he would want. I would think that he would also take a hard look at this current offensive staff and maybe retain some people, but also bring in some guys. But when you think about some of the guys that he has surrounded himself with on the coaching staff, what would you say Nebraska would be looking at, especially on the offensive side when it comes to certain position coaches? Maybe not even by name, but just certain qualities that he seems to maybe gravitate to.
Yeah, well, I think your quarterbacks, he likes to have a young guy because, again, he wants to work with the quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he wants to be intimately involved with them. And so I think if you're looking for a quarterbacks coach, it's likely going to be somebody, and this is how it kind of worked at West Virginia, somebody that was like recently elevated from GA status, from graduate assistant status. So somebody young in the profession,
Mm-hmm.
but somebody that he sees potential in. And a lot of those guys have gone on to be big things. Like currently right now, Jake Spavital is the offensive coordinator at Baylor. And he was like, a young, upcoming kind of quarterbacks coach, new guy that Dana was like, yeah, you can be QB coach. Heck, I might even call you offensive coordinator just to call you it, even though, Dana was truly the offensive coordinator. So I think from that perspective, you're looking at that. Offensive line, he had his boy Bill Biedenbaugh, who I think is still at Oklahoma, and then went to Ron Crook, who at last check was at Virginia Tech. I don't know if there's really, like, those two guys are very different. Bill and Ron, they're very different. So not very many common qualities there. He bounced around to several different running backs coach. So I think really, like, again, wide receivers was more of a young guys. Again, that is the position he played. But I think he likes to have, based off what I see or saw at West Virginia, offensive line and running backs coach, he went with more veteran guys and kind of had more of a hands-off approach with those two positions. But wide receiver, which is where he played, and quarterback, which he coaches a lot, he likes to have younger guys so that he can kind of be involved in the coaching as well.
When he left for Houston, there was a significant amount of animosity around that whole situation. Is that still persistent, or have people kind of gotten over that now?
I think once people stepped back and really looked at it, because, at the time it was being portrayed as Dana Holgorsen is leaving West Virginia for Houston. And at the time, Houston was like, still kind of not really in the Big 12, was making its way towards that direction. But it was like, oh my God, they're leaving a Power 5 school for a Group 5 school. This is bad. This is a bad look. It wasn't really that. I mean, West Virginia, because West Virginia gave him an extension offer, except it came with no guaranteed money. So it was no offer at all. Like, it was an insulting offer, to be honest, if you're Dana Holgorsen, and he took it that way. And so if I'm Dana, and I think fans over time kind of viewed it this way of, if you're Dana or his representatives or his family, yeah, why would you take that? There's no job security, none at all. You're about to do a complete roster overhaul, because I believe after he left, he went into 2019 with like 50 some scholarship players, because that was a senior laden team in 2018. And he knew 2019 was going to be difficult and wanted some guaranteed, and it wasn't there. And then Houston's like, hey, we'll give you the same exact contract, but fully guaranteed. And so I think over time, and it didn't even take that long, fans were like, yeah, that was a pretty easy decision for him, I think. So I think the animosity, whatever was there to begin with, is gone.
Chris, before we let you go, I just want to tie this back to the Big 12. As West Virginia in a similar position to Nebraska, trying to get bowl eligible here with a lot of good opportunities in front of them. Best team you've seen so far in the Big 12?
Kansas State put a whooping on them pretty good. I know they haven't been quite as consistent this year, but what they did in Morgantown to West Virginia, that was the one that kind of sent fans. It was like, wow, things are bad. Like this is, are you expecting to beat every top 25 team that you play? No, but you're expecting to be competitive. And Kansas State made West Virginia not competitive. And sure, West Virginia had their issues, but Kansas State also made, I can't reinforce this enough, made West Virginia not competitive. They made it that way because of how well they played.
Chris, really appreciate you spending time with us this morning. Enjoy the rest of the season and some great input there on Dana Holgorsen as well, man. Be well.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate it.
That's Chris Anderson, 24/7 sports site for West Virginia.